So thank you very much. That will bring us to the next question as well, Jay. So can you tell me more about the regulations by the European law and in relation to the plastic manufacturing companies?
Right. Well, basically what's happening right now is that, as many of these environmental regulations and laws, a lot of these originate from European Union. And once they've been established in Europe, then it seems very quickly to be expanding to other parts as well, like United States, more and more even now in Asia, and pretty much every developed part of the world. But Europe, many times, is the birthplace and the first sort of layer and level where these regulations are put into place. Right. So what happened was that the plastic manufacturing industry was actually for the first time ever made to take some responsibility of their product in the beginning of last year, 2021. In more specific, what it meant was that the plastic manufacturing companies or anyone who is also importing plastic into European Union must make sure that every kilo of plastic that enters the European market must contain at least 30% of recycled raw material as they manufacture these products.
But if you say the 30%, what they must use in the new production of plastic, I heard that it's not in that way that you can use plastic waste and recycle that, but you cannot use that many times for recycling. Let's say that you have plastic and you want to recycle that, and you can recycle that for 3-4 times. You make some granulates from that.
Right.
So what's your thought about that? Because it's not endless. You cannot endless recycle plastic waste, right?
Well, actually you can.
All right.
Depending on the method that you're using.
All right.
At some point, you always lose something, of course, when you're doing the recycling. But the first thing to understand is that we have two main categories of recycling plastic. You have the so-called mechanical recycling, and then you have a chemical recycling. Mechanical recycling is what is widely used, for example, for the PET plastics, which is what we normally use in our plastic bottles. So the plastic bottles and the PET plastics are typically broken down into small, as you said, granulin or pellets.
Yeah. And
then they can be reused to make new plastic bottles.
Endless.
Unfortunately not.
All right.
Yeah, that's where the problem comes. Mm-hmm. You basically, the quality of the plastic when you keep on breaking it down and rebuilding it again gets weaker and weaker and weaker. So the quality does decrease in the use on the mechanical recycling.
So it's a solution, but not.
Yeah. Well, basically, what it can be used, for example, is that you have an X amount, like let's say 70% of new plastic,
right,
and then you add up the 30% recycled part to it, and now you can use some of the recycling in it, and it becomes as an additive into the already used standard operation. And I know that there are plans to increase this, and I think the European Union target by I believe it's 2050 is to get into 100% recycling, so that basically all the plastic is coming from recycling, which is a very ambitious target, but definitely good for us. Now, that's for the mechanical recycling.
Right.
Mechanical recycling today is very effective when it comes to specifically using in the plastic bottles and the PET plastics. But unfortunately, you can't use the mechanical recycling method to all types of plastics. Generally, the plastic bags, the wrapping materials, the packaging products, the sort of a film, the sort of soft film is the big headache and the big problem in the recycling industry.
Okay.
That's the stuff that nobody wants. And also that's the stuff that we want.
Yeah,
right?
and that normally that ends in the nature
Exactly.
or in the landfill.
Like for example, here in Thailand, if you go to the landfills here and you walk around, you're not going to find any plastic bottles.
But that's what we see when we visit the facility before. The landfill is that there are a lot of people on that just collecting the pet flesh and something like that, just for the money, and they left the other things they don't can use.
Exactly. You know, like actually what happens, I'm using Thailand as an example, is that when you, for example, here, when you throw all your garbage into the bin, we have no waste separation. So everything that we put in goes into one box. In some of the newer condominium buildings, apartment blocks and such, they actually have different bin for glass, different for metal, different for paper, like you would have in Europe.
Right.
But once the tenants, once the people who live in the building have done all this separation, then the garbage truck shows up. And the garbage truck will then just put everything into one truck. So all this effort that went into separating it was really for nothing. And that's quite
just
sad.
for the show, or?
Yeah, you know, well, it's just an example of the infrastructure which is not complete, right? So there is the will, there is the desire at the user in the beginning, at the source, where the actual user, the citizen, the tenant in the building, he or she wants to separate it, right?
Yeah.
But then the infrastructure is not there to support that will, and that's what needs to be built. So unfortunately today, all the garbage here in Thailand goes into one single stream. Okay, everything is mixed in there.
Right.
And then what happens is that the garbage truck drivers, they would already start this separation process by picking out anything.
I saw that's amazing.
Right.
That was the first time when I visited Thailand and I saw the garbage trucks and I said, oh my God.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are they doing? And
Right.
they are separated behind the car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what they, for example, do is they got their own bags, and if you see a garbage truck driving, for example, on the streets of Bangkok, just take a look at the top of the car, the truck, right? Mm-hmm. You have these big bags which are full of plastic bottles, which they collect already, because the drivers themselves can then make an extra income from that. So they collect the bottles, then they go and take it and sell it to a recycler, who can then use those bottles, break it down to the granulin, have it washed, have it cleaned, processed, and then it can be made into new bottles.
That's the first step.
Yeah,
that's the first.
So that's happened there.
Yeah.
Then many times what happens is that the waste then comes into the waste management facilities. For example, the one that we operate in the city of Sakeo, mm-hmm. and that will be the second layer. At that moment, we also separate, and we would pick out any PET plastic that we get, and at the moment we donate it to other companies that use it. We don't get a lot of it because a lot of that is already picked up by the garbage truck drivers. But whatever amount we get, we would then donate that, and then that will go into recycling.
Great.
So if you, for example, walk into the landfills here, as I was saying, you don't really find plastic bottles in the landfills.
Yeah.
Because anybody can pick them up and go and sell them and actually get quite a nice kilo price for everything that you can sell. So that is not really the problem. The problem, and now coming back to your original question, the problem is really this film, the plastic film, the bags, the wrapping materials, and the packaging products. And that is where the problem is right now. And mechanical recycling methods traditionally are not capable of processing that sort of raw material.
Okay.
That is where the chemical recycling process comes into play. And that is where we are focusing on. What we do is we focus on the raw material that nobody else wants. We want the stuff that all the landfills in the world are just piling up with. All right, we're running out of space. And for us, that is the most preferred raw material, plastic bags, polyolefins, polyethylene. That is exactly what we're focusing on. That will give us the opportunity to make it into oil, which can then be used as a raw material to make it into new plastic products.
Okay, can you explain us to more in detail what the difference is between the chemical recycling process besides of the other process?
So yeah, so the mechanical recycling would basically be just breaking down the plastic, right?
In
Crushing it, making it into smaller pieces, which can then be washed and cleaned and purified, and then made into a plastic bottle, for example, again.
Right.
What we do is we take the plastic bags, and in our pyrolysis chemical recycling units, like the ones that we have here in Bangkok, we would then first close those plastics into an oxygen-free environment inside the reactor, and then we would begin to heat up the plastic and
not burn them.
No, we never burn the plastic.
Right.
None of the flames would ever touch the plastic itself, but we simply heat up the plastic. It's like an oven, you could say.
Yeah.
Once the plastic becomes hot, once the heating process develops, what we start to receive is we start to receive these gases that start to emit from the plastic.
Right.
And these gases can be very valuable. What we actually do is we capture those gases and then we channel them back into the machine. And actually what we do is we can use those gases to make the heat that we need for the process.
Wow.
So it's like a self-feeding system by using those gases. So that's a really, really valuable thing.
Good.
Aside from the gases, we also receive smoke. And the smoke will then be channeled through our distillation system, where we will eventually then distill that smoke into liquid form, which is the pyrolysis oil, or the advanced bio oil as it's called. That's basically in the most simplest way, that is the chemical recycling.
So
process.
when we bring that back to the main question of the European law and
Yes.
the 30%.
So, in a lot of places right now in the world, and starting from Europe, the plastic manufacturing companies are obligated to use this minimum of 30%, right? And if they are manufacturing plastic bottles, for example, that's a very easy thing because they already got all these recycling and collection systems in place. But when it comes to the film, which is still the largest type of plastic manufactured every year, it are the plastic films, right?
Yeah.
The only way for them to do that is really efficiently from oil produced from chemical recycling. And that is where we come into play. So these plastic manufacturing companies are by law obligated now to use our product. And when this law came into play in the beginning of last year, our phone started ringing and we started getting contacted by the largest oil companies, petrochemical companies, plastic manufacturing companies who are now looking to buy our product.
Wow.
Not necessarily because they want to, but because they need to, right? And this is the direction where things are going. We definitely need to solve the plastic waste problem, and I do think that this regulation is great because it brings the responsibility on the manufacturers. And by doing it in this way, there is more funding, there is more support given for companies like Corsair, who are out there making our hands dirty and doing the actual recycling on a day-to-day basis. Now, because of this regulation from the European Union, we get that support when our clients are by law obligated to actually buy our product.
A very good situation.
Well, from our sense, I mean, and our point of view as a business, you couldn't think of a better situation.
Yeah.
So I would say that we are really, really in the core, in the center of this plastic waste revolution that is being developed right now, and really, which is fantastic, supported by all of these different governments and organizations globally. European Union, World Wildlife Foundation, the United Nations, and everyone else.
Perfect. So, that's the last thing, is that if a company are not doing the 30% recycling in the projects as well, they get a penalty, right?
Correct. Yeah, they gotta pay up to 800 euros per ton, per
as a
1,000
penalty
kilos.
if they not.
Correct. If they don't
use
have
that,
that minimum amount. And that means that, for example, right now, if you look at the global production of advanced bio oil from Corsair and all the other companies around the world, you could say that the global production today, my guess is that it's probably somewhere upwards of 20 million liters a year as of right now today.
20 million.
Yes. Okay, could be 50, maybe. Companies don't necessarily report all of their numbers publicly, but I would say that probably 20 million is quite close. It's not a lot. It's a very, very small number.
Sounds a lot.
Actually, it's very little.
All right.
If you think about that in an annual basis. So, there's a lot of companies that claim to do more and doing this, doing that, but I think that's quite close. By the end of this year, 6 months from now, it might be double, but that's sort of what I believe to be at this very moment here in July 2022. So while the production globally is that small, and believe me, it's very small, the demand for this product at the same time is about 100 billion liters a year.
100 billion.
Yes.
Wow.
So that is where the opportunity is. There is definitely a lot of business opportunities, a lot of market opportunities there to grow this industry from that 20 million liters a year to that 100 billion liters a year. And that's where we want to be among the top 3 companies in the world as Corsair.
So, thank you very much for this explanation.
Thank you.
And,
we've got a lot of jobs to do here.
Yeah, but it's really, really good to have the opportunity, and also by regulations of the European law.
Yes.
Is that the only thing what I can say is the timing is right now. It's perfect. So
Unbelievable.
thank you very much for this question, and thank you very much for this answer as well.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.